He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
This is The Alex Marlow Show. I'm Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. Thank you for being with me today back at home base, and it's a small comfort to be here. Yesterday was definitely one of the toughest days of my career, probably one of the toughest days of my life, I think is reasonable to say, after the assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk. I have to say that that's a new one for me. I've seen a lot, but I've never had a friend get murdered, much less assassinated. And trying to deal with that on a busy workday has been tough, but it's been a great comfort that so many people have been interested in hearing from my perspective. You probably see me popping up places from Fox News to Newsmax to your favorite podcast, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep trying to share what I know about my friend Charlie, which is quite a bit. I was lucky enough to be deeply involved in his rise in politics and in culture, and to be a mentor at some times, and other times he mentored me and taught me the way. But he's been an incredible friend and ally, and he really is the best version of a guy that you can imagine. Is the ultimate in your head, whatever you're thinking of how Charlie is, he's even better than that. He was just a tireless and persuasive voice for conservative and Judeo-Christian values who will now be remembered throughout history. He is immortal now. He is immortalized. You'd have to say this is the highest profile assassination in this country in many, many decades, which is, of course, horrific. It's a tragedy in a sense. It's a catastrophe in other senses. But what it does do is it does cement Charlie's place in history, and it will make people reflect on what he stood for. What he stood for were all good things. Of course, above all else, he stood for American values, America First principles, our Constitution, our founding documents, American exceptionalism. He stood for Christianity. He was a warrior for Christ. And I'll tell you, on a personal level, I got to spend a lot of time with Charlie from his rise through a junior contributing writer at Breitbart News to founding Turning Point to being one of the top voices in all of podcasting and radio. I was always most excited when he was talking scripture, when he was talking the Bible, because I knew I was going to learn something from him when he was doing that. And it just shows you that he's such a robust toolkit. There's so many elements of what he was doing that go beyond just generic political talking points. And he was also an inspiration in terms of his motivation, how he continued to try to find new hills to climb. He was the biggest on X, the everything app. And then he said, well, let's take on TikTok. Let's take on Instagram. Let's go there. And I think really what ultimately is the reason why he was assassinated is that he cracked the code on the campuses. He figured something out that no one else had figured out. That simply sitting down, and I think he was deliberately sitting down, I think that was part of the stagecraft, meeting people under a humble awning and talking to them about whatever they wanted. People who disagreed always would go up first. And being able to talk to them on their terms, on their campus, where he would go to them, I think was something that drew a lot of people, it drew their curiosity, it drew a lot of people out of the woodwork, it drew a lot of people into the conversation who otherwise would have just been spoon-fed leftist talking points from their professors, from their favorite media outlets, and from many of their favorite influencers, if they even bothered to be political at all. So he was reaching people alone in many cases. Of course, in the space that I'm in, radio, podcasting, he was terrific at that. He had a monster voice there. He had a huge voice in social media as well, another place where we are, where Breitbart is, where others are. But he would go places where no one else was going. We're talking social, and we're talking the campuses. And he had this physical bravery that I'll come back to in a bit. But I'll tell you, he wasn't just someone who was a political and religious figure, which he was, and he would be remembered that way above everything else. But when I got the news yesterday that he'd been shot, first of all, I was told that he was dead immediately. And having seen the footage, unfortunately, I mean, I hope he died quickly for the sake of his family and for the sake of those who loved him and knew him even more than I did. I hope he didn't suffer. And from the looks of things, I don't think he did. But I'll tell you, the last conversation we had, and I was a weekly guest on his podcast, was this Monday. And normally we go a half an hour together, but he let me run a few minutes early because he was very passionate about opining on the importance of family structure. We were talking about that poll that I talked about on this show also earlier in the week about how having children, having a family had become the lowest priority for young women, and how discouraged he was by that and how he wanted to fight back against those ideas. So that motivated him. He wasn't just motivated by power, by political prowess, by getting a great platform. He really wanted what's best for humanity. And he would let me run just because he wanted to have the time to share his passion with family formation with his audience. And he formed a lovely family, beautiful wife, beautiful children. And I'll tell you, the first thing I thought, I was in the studio at Hugh Hewitt Show. I was getting ready to fill in. It was about 20 minutes prior to going on the air. The three gentlemen who helped produce the show were completely unaware of what was going on. I got a call from Matt Boyle, who I knew was speaking with the vice president's team at the time. And so he was getting, not firsthand information, but it was pretty strong information that this was very bad news that we were getting. And before I could even open my mouth and share with the people who I would be in the trenches with for the next 3 hours on radio, I couldn't help but think of those kids. And I couldn't help but think of his wife, who I met, who I got to share a few moments with, telling her how wonderful it will be when they have their family, and offer that light encouragement. I don't think I needed to push them. I think that was always their plan, but I got to share with them how rewarding it will be when that day comes for them. And it did come, and it came quickly, and it came twice, where they got to welcome a new child in the world, someone whose father is now at a legendary and immortal status, but he should be there to watch them grow up. And I think this is an important point to emphasize here, that Charlie was not safe on that campus. And this is a catastrophe for our country that he wasn't. And no one should accept it. Details right now is we know that the killer is at large. There's a suspect. There's an image of the suspect online. Anyone can find it. And we're getting some insight into what took place. There's a image of a sniper's nest on a building directly from Charlie, which should have been something that was surveilled. It should have been something that was monitored ahead of time. I don't know who the blame falls on. I will tell you, local law enforcement and the university are the first places that come to mind, but it's probably shared. It probably goes beyond that as well. And this person seemed to have a clear shot at Charlie. The person appears to be a young man, but very skinny. I don't think it's a trans person, but according to a report I'm seeing from the Wall Street Journal, that they had some inscriptions on the ammunition that were trans and in Antifa. And I will tell you from firsthand knowledge, because I communicate with Charlie on a daily basis until yesterday. And it's not all dramatic, extended communications like our once-a-week chats on the internet, but we're always corresponding to some degree. And I know there was concern and trepidation about Antifa specifically about this event. I don't think he thought he was going to get assassinated. I don't think he would have shown up if he knew it was that bad. But if we really are a country of the First Amendment, if we really are a country that values free speech and believes in free speech, then Charlie Kirk needs to be safe on campus when he needs to go. And whoever is the brave soul that attempts to follow in Charlie's footsteps and once again reach out to these students who still will be there and they still need to hear this message of American exceptionalism, of Judeo-Christianity, of science, of the glory of America, the glory of God. The next person who wants to bring that message to the campus, they should be assured that they will be safe. Of all of our government waste and all of our government largesse, why is it that we do not protect our First Amendment for those who speak it the most boldly? I don't know. I've got some theories. We'll come back to some of those. But it is an important lesson. This must be a lesson, and we will to discuss these lessons. We'll do it boldly. We'll do it freely here on the show and throughout, I would guess, years, if not decades to come about this particular incident. But it's very striking to me that this father, this leader, that he was not safe on this campus. And he was not safe from familiar suspects, people who were indoctrinated into the trans cult ideology and the anti-fascist myth, that people who dare to speak freely on college campuses, the most lopsided political environment that you could have in the United States. a place where there's only one set of ideas that is tolerated, and that is the left-wing value system, the godless secular value system. That's all that's allowed there. And for him to go and for him to speak and for him to get gunned down where he sat for doing exactly that, for engaging in dialogue passively and peacefully, not towering over people from a stage. And Charlie's a big guy, a large person, 6'4" at least. He could have had some optics where he was very intimidating. Instead, he sat while they stood. That was the optics he desired. He didn't wear a fancy suit and snakeskin boots. He wears a t-shirt. He gives out hats. He's a man who has immense wealth and power and an infinite future potential. And yet he chose to meet people where they were on their terms, as best he could, realistically. That's what they feared. And we can't lose that in all these lessons. But one of the lessons for all of us is that this civil war that we've been in, which has been largely nonviolent, is getting increasingly violent. I had a lot of dark thoughts in the last 24 hours, but the darkest one I had was that this wasn't a surprise. The darkest one is that it added up. And that gives me chills just thinking about it. When Boyle called me, I was getting ready to fill in for Hugh. I was doing the math and I was thinking about this group text I'm on with Charlie. I was thinking about where he was, how there's been drama in Utah lately, how Charlie continues to get attacked politically from the likes of Van Jones to South Park. I think the ribbing of South Park is not equivalent, by the way. I think satire is welcome in this country and it should be tolerated. South Park, apparently Comedy Central, I guess, is not going to play the episode now. That's not how to handle it. That's not what Charlie would have wanted. Charlie was a warrior for free speech. My godfather and friend John Nolte suggested you tack on a little tribute at the beginning, maybe the end. Say that we honor Charlie and we satire out of love. Maybe not that far, but I mean, we don't mean any harm by it. We certainly don't condone any violence against him. And we disavow political violence. That's all he had to do. And say they want to pull the whole thing. You're not getting the spirit of what Charlie stood for, if that's what you believe. He was a free speech warrior and a happy warrior. You'll hear me mention a lot, probably forever now, that I have a unique perspective in that I was at Andrew Breitbart's right hand when he passed away at 43. Completely different circumstances. He was a young man, of course, but significantly older than Charlie. He died of natural causes. Charlie was assassinated on camera. Different things. Charlie was, in a way, further along in his career. Andrew had incredible success behind the scenes, but was just beginning to have success publicly. Charlie had been, you just see the photos online. He seems to have met every world leader and had earned the respect of people all over the world. So there were some differences, but they were both giants in a movement that does not have all that many. You can count on a couple of hands who were the true giants of conservatism over the last couple of decades. And Andrew and Charlie are right at the top of that list. And they both got cut down in their prime. And I was at Andrew's right hand and I got to know Charlie as well as just about anyone. There's a couple others, I'm sure, but pretty close to the top. And though they never met, they will always have this connection that Charlie's first foray into the political space was writing for me, writing for us at Breitbart News. And though Andrew wasn't alive to see it, Joel Pollack and myself encouraged Charlie to take the ball himself, to run with his own story, to see where it takes him. And it eventually led to the founding of Turning Point USA. As I've said before, and I'll say again, I offered him a job and he didn't want it because Turning Point was big enough. And he didn't know where it was going to go. I'm sure he had no idea it would get as big as it would, but he had faith and he had support. And the support was crucial here. That a lot of you in our audiences or people who share our content, we need you. There's no point to what we do. If I try to pitch you on a book or on a podcast or on a show, it's not just that it's not a cynical thing. It's not about making money. It's not about it's about feeling a connection. And we need this as those of us who create content, who do activism. there's no point to it if we don't feel like the message is resonating with people. We need to feel that energy, and Charlie lived off of it. He thrived off of it. He didn't get his jollies from partying or going to bars or restaurants or ball games. I think he went to a ball game here or there. But what he lived for was accomplishment. He wanted achievement. He wanted to be successful. What was his version of successful? Career accomplishment, family formation, honor. I just find it so striking that he's a type of guy that, and there's so few of them. The last time I saw him was at his recent summit in Florida. We had a joyful reunion, a lot of smiles, hugs. I'll play that video soon for you in a moment where I need to play it, probably the next few days of our last interview together. But I got to introduce him to my son. Which again, I brought my eldest son to this trip because I know that's what Andrew would do. Is he would bring in his children to our world and to see our work and to see what we did. And I thought that was an important memory. And it's an important memory for us that even though Charlie's a larger than life person and is now will be immortalized, he was also flesh and blood and bone and a whole lot of heart. The reason why they took him from us is because he's effective, because he's joyful, and because he wanted to live. He wasn't reckless. He was a person who wanted a life of longevity. He lived very healthfully. He was setting himself up so that he would be a contributor to our cause for decades and decades. He would have a lasting legacy that is probably beyond anything you could even fathom. You never know with a guy like that. He was clearly touched by God in many ways. His communication skills, but really his work ethic was really what struck me the most. He was just a very bright light. And he was only getting better, which is so important. That's what was also inspiring to me, is that you didn't know where he was going to go. He'd achieved so much, but you didn't know where he was going to go. And the people who have bought into some of the worst ideas that are permeating American society, that those of us who fight for freedom and want law and order are the fascist. For those of us who think that this trans phenomenon is nothing more than a contagion, we're the bad ones in their eyes. And they want us dead. They want to gun us down. They robbed us. They robbed us. And they robbed his children of a father. And they robbed us of a friend. They robbed us of a role model. It was intentional. It was on purpose. And it was not something that we couldn't have seen coming. There's been so many incidents over the years, and we'll compile all these for you, Breitbart, and I'll remind you of them from time to time. But from the rise of Antifa to the Black Lives Matter riots, to the assassination attempt on Steve Scalise, to the multiple assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the attacks on Rand Paul, which were repeated, multiples of those. There's a climate of violence that's been growing on the left in this country for the last decade. I write about this in Breaking the Law, which is so essential right now, and I feel bad mentioning it because I don't want this to be perceived as a sales pitch, but it's in there. This is what I've been obsessed with for the last year. I write about how at Breitbart, we were tracking political violence against Trump and his supporters in 2018, and we had hundreds of examples. We did until we got to like 600 or so in just 1 year, and then, or maybe it was a year and a half. And then we stopped. We thought we got the point across. That they want us dead. not every Democrat, but the left, the people who are in control of the MSNBCs and of the Democrat Party. And they use by any means necessary. They tell us this, and we should believe them at this point. And you see it playing out today. I have a lot of videos of people online on TikTok. I have clips from the Blue Sky platform. I'm going to save a lot of those for tomorrow because I want today to be more of a tribute still to Charlie. But you can't resist pointing out stuff like George Conway, one of the stars of Breaking the Law, tweeting out an image of a Nazi that died in his 20s and then was used as propaganda, obviously drawing an equivalence to Charlie. He did that this morning on 9/11, no less. That's where their mind is at. Barack Obama saying, we don't yet know what motivated the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk. This was last night at about 5 p.m. We know what the motivation was. The same way we knew the motivation of what that man did to that Ukrainian refugee in that train car in North Carolina. You don't need to hear the audio of him saying, I got that white girl. You don't even need to hear it. We know what he was doing. He was murdering an innocent white girl for being an innocent white girl. If you have a brain, you can admit that. But the left can't admit it now because they're going to have to confront something. That we have a movement in this country, the American left, that has become truly evil. There are demons running the American left at this moment. And I'm not just saying that to be provocative. I'm just saying I'm using Occam's razor. The point I've been making to people, and I think this is worth putting a point on. One of the biggest, I think, pieces of evidence that there is a God and that God exists is that the absence of God is so much less plausible. The thought that we're all some sort of a coincidence, that every person, every love you've ever had, every child you've ever seen, every musical note composed by Bach, every incredible ocean view that you've ever seen in your life, all that's a coincidence. That doesn't strike me as likely. That seems more absurd than that there is a creator. So then how do you explain when a trans killer guns down children as they prayed, and then people on the left rush to keyboards and cameras to try to mock the children, as Gavin Newsom did, or suggest that the shooter was really a victim of society? The clip from Van Jones that just has to be played over and over again is this one.
We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering.
You
got that white girl. He got that white girl. Elsewhere in this video, Van Jones said in the same interview that the killer was the one who was hurt. Hurt people hurt people. He was the victim, the murderer who stabbed to death a Ukrainian immigrant who was fleeing a war-torn country to America, which is supposed to be a beacon of freedom for the world. And we have our most privileged elites rushing to microphones and cameras to explain why she's a victim of circumstance, but the killer is a victim of the system. He's the one that's truly been oppressed by this evil country. How could you explain all of this, these circumstances, other than that there's something truly satanic at work in America at this time? I'll make recommendations on where we go from here momentarily, and they, of course, start with prayer and God, law and order. But I'll say one thing in honor of my friend Charlie, that throughout human history, a lot of civilizations have regarded a death in one's prime to be a beautiful thing. and to celebrate great men who are willing to die in dangerous settings because they have bravery, because they have the spirit of adventure, because they have a will, and because they know that history will reflect well upon them should they see that fate. That is a good thing, and that's a strength, and that's bravery. A death in one's prime is one of the most poetic images that you can think about. And that is a small bit of solace. But he shouldn't have had to die. He should have been protected. Charlie should have been protected. There should have been assurances in place that we can have free speech in this country, and we are free from these monsters, these godless monsters, tormenting us, robbing us of our people, robbing us of our fathers, robbing us of our bosses. It's 1,000 people who work at Turning Point. He's got one of the most unbelievable radio teams. It's all these people who Charlie helps behind the scenes. There's a moving tribute from J.D. Vance, which is everywhere, so I won't read it simply for that reason. Hopefully you've read it by now. But he points out how Charlie was integral in the staffing of the government. He's helped me on so many things behind the scenes. He was integral to me getting Breaking Biden done. He was one of my biggest champions of breaking the law. He's a big supporter and advocate for people. He is so many encouraging texts that I got over the years, and I can only imagine he did the same for his countless other friends. He was a real team player and a unique unifying force in our movement, where there's so much division and fracturing. People who are cherry picking one issue and saying, I'm out now because I'm dissatisfied because my top issue, I'm not seeing enough progress on that front. And he was taken from us, contrary to what Barack Obama says, by exactly what we know, by the left and their demonic forces. They stamped out his light, one of the brightest lights we had. And then they're going on, they're lecturing us about civility. This was a clip on CBS that I can't resist playing.
And as Tony mentioned, not everyone took to his words or his rhetoric. You know, at times they were offensive to specific communities. But with that said, this is not the time to focus on that. We are focused on this tragedy. Speaking of this tragedy, is this a moment for your party to reflect on political violence? Is it a moment for us to think about the responsibility of our political leaders and their voices and what it does to the masses as they get lost in misinformation or disinformation that turns in and spills into political violence?
I say both parties.
My jaw's on the floor. This is CBS. This is supposed to be one of the standard bearers for American news. It's the highest rated, I think, news outlet that there is. Maybe Fox has surpassed it. I don't know, but I think it's the biggest one. And this speaker, and I wasn't familiar with him. His name's, I guess, Nate Burleson. He's talking to Kevin McCarthy. And he's saying that it's your party and our political rhetoric. What is our political rhetoric? Charlie brought a message of peace. He brought a message of nonviolence, and he was practicing it at the time. He just wanted to talk. He wanted to sit down and talk, which I think the optics of that are very profound. Wanted to sit down and talk and debate in the spirit of the First Amendment. And he was not kept safe. And then people rushing to the TV. And how did this guy get on the TV? Why do they think at CBS that Nate Burleson is an authority? I got to play a little bit more just to see if any of these guys react here. Although Gayle King is the one who's talking now. I don't think very highly of her. The other three guys at the table, though, Kevin McCarthy, Robert Costa, who's supposed to be a pretty neutral reporter, and Tony DeCouple, I think that's his name. He's supposed to be pretty neutral too. So let's see if anyone jumps in and says, that's insane what you just said.
Parties. You know,
I don't even say parties. I say a nation.
Okay.
And if there's a moment
Even
in time
better.
we want to look to, and I looked back and I watched this again when Robert F. Kennedy is running, and he's in Indianapolis, and he just got the news that Martin Luther King was killed.
I can't.
And he has to tell.
It's terrible. It's a terrible answer. Whatever he goes from there's no way he brings that in. I can't take time in the show to do that. It's terrible. The answer is, how dare you? We're not going to take lectures from you. You've been trying to kill us for years. You tried to kill Steve Scalise. You guys tried to kill Donald Trump. You guys did kill Charlie Kirk. And so many others, hundreds of incidents of violence against Trump supporters, people wearing MAGA hats. People got unpersoned, lost jobs, lost bank accounts, lost social media accounts. It was all leading up to this. So what do we do? What do we do? First thing, I'll call everyone out. There's a season of firing that's going on. It's taking place. And we'll play a bunch of clips on the show the next few days of the worst offenders. But when you see people, leftists chanting, we got Charlie in the neck, as we saw on TikTok. I won't play the video on the show today, maybe tomorrow. It's on Breitbart. When you get the people who are out there like Matthew Dowd, which I played on Hugh's show yesterday, suggesting maybe it was a Charlie supporter firing his gun in celebration, just happened to hit him in the neck, one shot. And that maybe Charlie had it coming with his rhetoric, that they all need to get fired. They do. It's like, I don't generally call for mass firings, but these people should be fired. They should be fired. We know it. We know it. And we're just going to say it now. DC Comics canceling a trans writer who named Gretchen Felker Martin after he celebrated Kirk's assassination. The celebrations on Blue Sky and Instagram are all over the place. Don't want the show to get hijacked by it. But the sports world, the Panthers fire a staffer after mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination. How do you mock a guy like Charlie? I don't understand it. He stood for everything that's good. The New York Times called him a provocateur today in their headline, his obituary. He was the opposite of a provocateur. He was trying to get people to come to the table and talk to him. The word provocateur is specific. He provoked his own death. That's what they meant with that. And they want to dog whistle us. Let's play. This is Ilhan Omar and Mehdi Hassan, who is a longtime MSNBC guy. Has to be heard to be believed. Check it.
How cynical is it for big name figures on the right, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, many others, Nancy Mace yesterday, saying this is a Democratic Party problem, as if people like you are not getting death threats all the time, credible ones?
I mean, it's actually disgusting. And you know, it reminds you that although these people pretend to be adults, that they are sometimes, you know, they think a lot less than even children do when it comes to compassion, when it comes to thoughtfulness, when it comes to being a leader. You know, I did expect the president's address to the nation would have been a lot more compassionate filled. It would have been less partisan.
Yeah, compassionate to the murderers. She wants more compassionate for the murderers. And Mehdi Hassan's debate tactic, and he's a pro-debater, is we're shifting the conversation to, again, the bad guys are the victims here. You know who's the real victim here is Ilhan Omar. She's the real victim in the Charlie Kirk assassination.
He doesn't even know who the assassin is for him to say,
yes,
wing lunatic. I think it kind of denigrated his status and the status of the office he holds. But what I do know for sure is that, you know, Charlie was someone who once said, you know, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay slavery.
So he deserved it. That's the implication, because he called George Floyd, who was a scumbag. He did not deserve to die necessarily. I don't think he deserved to die. I take back necessarily. He did not deserve to die. But he was resisting arrest, and he was on fentanyl, which are fundamental ways to die. Those are two, if you're trying to die, that's a good combo of what to do that day. If you want this to be your last day on earth, go on fent and then resist arrest. He's acting like Charlie deserved it for that reason. That's the implication here. And Mehdi Hassan is nodding along, and it gets worse.
Downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country by saying Juneteenth should never exist. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
So he's laughing. He's smiling and laughing. That's what I wanted to play for you. They smile and laugh that Charlie wants a civil debate when he was literally physically, civilly debating while he got murdered in front of his family. So it's very dark. And if you don't tell me that there are demons in the room with them, or on the Zoom, demons on the Zoom with them, then you get a tough sell for me. There's so much more. I'll save this Seth Moulton clip. Let's get some JB Pritzker tomorrow. Nepo baby Huey's been maybe the worst. He's a total idiot. But the president's rhetoric often foments violence. He blamed J6 for Charlie's assassination. There's a guy who stood up and started cheering immediately after Charlie got murdered. That's on video, sitting near the front. That's out there for those of you with a sick interest in these things. I have an obligation to cover it. I've got an obligation, but it's all sick. It's all disturbing. Where do we go from here? I said this on yesterday's show, and I'll say this repeatedly. The first step is prayer. The first step is commune with God. Go to church. Go to temple this weekend. Go with your family. Start understanding what's important. We have a big fight in front of us. Next, go to law and order. Run towards law and order. We need our First Amendment rights protected. That should be the expectation of our government and of our police system. The bad guys need to get locked up and they need to stay locked up. The illegal aliens need to leave, all of them. We need to do whatever we can to protect our children, our young people. The type of people who are deprived fathers. I've been saying Charlie was also an economic engine. The guy created so much industry on his own, and he would have created so much more. That alone makes him a great American. He does great things with his time and with his resources. He employs people. He gives them purpose. And the next thing, we need to be prepared for a physical fight. We should not initiate it. We should not do anything illegal. But if you don't believe that I'm going to spend more time working on my personal security and personal safety with my family, making that a higher priority in my life, you better believe I am. And all of you should too, especially if you intend to be more outspoken. But let's not lose the moral high ground. I don't think we will. I'm confident we'll keep it. But it's time to be fired up for Charlie's legacy, for what he stood for. It's time to be fired up for ourselves and for our country. He will not have died in vain. We'll make sure of that at Breitbart News and the Marlow Show. I know at Salem. I know President Trump and his family, Vice President Vance, all of them will as well. So much more on this tomorrow. I do want to point out a few important things. Donald Trump's going to posthumously award Charlie the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's great news. It's a beautiful tribute. It's our highest civilian honor you can have. He deserves it. And to get it at that age is a terrific honor. All of the vigils, I'll play some vigil footage tomorrow, Misty. Let's make a point. There's spontaneous vigils popping up, completely grassroots, no AstroTurf involved. Genuine outpouring, street art I'm seeing popping up in Charlie's honor. All that's good. Send me photos, aloha@alexmarlow.com. The Yankees held a moment of silence in honor of Charlie, put his photo up on the board, Yankee Stadium. Amazing. Wonderful. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling Charlie a lion-hearted friend of Israel. European political leaders, one after the next, praising Charlie. All throughout South America, Brazil, Argentina, El Salvador, we're seeing so much praise roll in. He was a truly international figure. And I'll have more on that in the days and weeks to come. But his ability to reach beyond the United States. Think about what he was doing. He was trying to help Trump buy Greenland. Crazy and beautiful and wonderful in his final months on Earth. And we'll point out all the bad guys, all the bad stuff they're doing. Vice President Vance is meeting with Charlie and his casket, his remains, his family. He's going to fly on Air Force 2 to his home in Arizona. I don't know if that'll be his final resting place. I imagine it might be, but I don't know. He deserves all the honors, all the accolades, all the praise he's getting, and then some. Because people are going to be praising him for his legacy as an activist and as a broadcaster and as a public figure, but really as a guy, he was just the best guy around. He was truly a wonderful person and a wonderful friend. And I owe him a lot, and I'm happy to have played a role in his rise and his success. That's today's show. There is so much more, but I think that's plenty for now. These are heavy topics, but it means a lot to me to have this audience that I can speak with and share it's a great comfort. I'll tell you, it's a dark day for me, but it's a great comfort to be with all of you. All right. Thanks, Misty. Thanks to all of you in the audience. Talk to you tomorrow.